Hello, good morning. I'm Sergeant Drew, and this presentation will be on diversity and why it's important. Our risk assessment is low. In case of emergency, you will exit to my left and to your right. At the end of this PowerPoint presentation, you will have the knowledge about diversity and why it's important. You will explore two major roles African Americans and women played on diversity within our military. You will now discover diversity and the changes it's made for us today. Diversity is defined by the Merriam-Webster Dictionary as the inclusion of people of different races, cultures, etc. in a group or organization. This is a complex topic because diversity ultimately is what the United States of America was founded on when immigrants charted new territory and settled on this land. The inclusion of diversity has a multitude of dimensions, from incorporating and understanding barriers and attributes that include but are not limited to race, sex, religious beliefs. This presentation will go in depth as to how people of color and women have fought to gain rights in society and the military, ultimately contributing to diversity of today's nation. Next, we're going to go into the Civil War amendments. These amendments include the 13th, the 14th, and the 15th Amendment. The 13th Amendment is what Abraham Lincoln passed the Emancipation Proclamation that abolished slavery during the Civil War. The 14th Amendment was reversed due to the Dred Scott case, and it is to deal with due process and equal protection clause. The 15th Amendment states can't deny the right to vote based on race, color, or previous conditions of servitude, which later on in the presentation we will see that the states found ways with certain laws, such known as the Black Codes and the Jim Crow laws, to get around this 15th Amendment. Next, we will get into the Jim Crow laws and the Black Codes. The Jim Crow laws are laws passed by the states that established separate but equal facilities for whites and blacks. This lasted from 1876 to 1965. In 1889, the Georgia General Assembly segregated public facilities, and majority of these facilities would not let African American individuals enter through the front, so they had to enter through the back of certain facilities that also let white people enter through the front because they didn't want to seem like they were intermingling, because at this time, during this portion, they were all not equal, but they wanted to view themselves as equal. Even though these places were separate, the places for African Americans were rarely equal. Now we're going to go into the Black Codes. These are a body of laws, statutes, and rules enacted by Southern states immediately after the Civil War to regain control over the freed slaves, maintaining white supremacy, and ensuring the continued supply of cheap labor. This also made it so that they couldn't own property or guns, and took away their right to vote, and made so that if they didn't have a job, they could be arrested and forced to work for free. Next, we will move into President Truman's support for civil rights. President Truman put his presidency on the line to fight for civil rights. He has a famous quote that states, "I am asking for equality of opportunity for all human beings, and if it ends up in my failure to be reelected, that failure will be in good cause." Also, in July of 1948, Truman issued an executive order for integration of armed forces, calling for equality of treatment and opportunity in the armed forces without regard to race, color, religion, or national origin. He also ordered at this time that the discrimination of the hiring of government employees be ended. Through President Truman's respect for human dignity, he became one of the first presidents to help fight for the civil rights of African Americans, and he was one of the leaders, along with the abolitionists and the great Martin Luther King, and with fighting for these civil rights. Next, we're going to go into the women of the Revolution and women in general in their fight and struggle for diversity. During the Revolutionary War, these brave women had roles such as nurses, seamstresses, and cooks for the troops. Some of these women even went as far as to fight alongside of their husbands on the field of battle, disguised as men. You have Anne Bailey, who fought under the name Samuel Gay. She belonged to the Second. Anne Bailey was discharged, fined, and put in jail for 2 weeks. Anne Smith was condemned for her attempt to join the Army to secure the enlistment bonus fee, while Deborah Sampson served in the Continental Army as Private Robert Shutterfield for over a year. When her gender was discovered, she was honorably discharged and granted a veteran's pension by the state of Massachusetts. And then you have some brave women who took the fight to the British and the Loyalists from their homes, such as Nancy Hart of Georgia, who reportedly shot 2 Loyalist soldiers in her kitchen and held several others at gunpoint until help arrived. And then we have Martha Bratton, who blew up her husband's cache of gunpowder before it could be stolen by Loyalists. When British troops seized the home of Rebecca Bruton Mott, she permitted the Patriot forces to destroy it. Now we'll go into the brave women of the Civil War. First off, we have Harriet Beecher Stowe, who most people believe was one of the causes of the Civil War due to her book Uncle Tom's Cabin that made her an international celebrity. We also have Harriet Tubman, who was a runaway slave who became a conductor on the Underground Railroad, who was also said to have had major roles in some of the battles in the Civil War in the northern parts. And then we have the brave wife of President Abraham Lincoln, Mary Todd Lincoln. She was the first lady during the Civil War, and she was a prominent figure in the area. And then we have Lucretia Mott, who was an abolitionist as well as a women's rights activist. She was elected the first president of the American Equal Rights Association, an organization dedicated to universal suffrage. And then we have Claire Barton, who was a nurse during the Battle of Bull Run, and after which she established an agency to distribute supplies to soldiers on both sides of the lines during the Civil War. And this association is called today the American Red Cross. Next, we'll move into the brave women of World War I and World War II. These brave women had to step up because the draft took majority of the men away for the fight. These women had to take up the fight at home by taking over the male's role as being the head of the house, majority of the workforce. And it wasn't until World War I and the passing of the 19th Amendment that women began to see change in how society and the federal government viewed them. The 19th Amendment, ratified in 1920, guaranteed women the right to vote. While we also have a program called WASP, it's Women's Air Force Service Pilots. This program was created in 1943. It was made up of female civilian pilots serving under military command. These women pilots were used to fly planes within the U.S. to free up male combat pilots for overseas duties. In conclusion, the core foundation of the United States of America was built from immigrants and Native people. Currently, different cultures and backgrounds work together hand in hand in our military, which symbolizes the progress of our nation. It is important to continue to educate one another because society is ever changing. The different beliefs, backgrounds, and battles that both people of color and women have uniquely shaped and continued to create diversity within the ranks of the military and in the world. Due to events both people of color and women have had to face while serving before me, the United States Armed Forces continues to create and promote equal opportunity for all that serve. There's a great quote that goes hand in hand with this from the great Maya Angelou, and it states, "It is time for parents to teach young people early on that in diversity there is beauty and there is strength." Now, we will open the floor to any questions you have regarding anything that we talked about during this presentation today.